as you alluded to earlier when you said you're like Elite 3, the ones that you think are relevant, right? Top Esports is not in there, but even though this might shock fans, they have the same team as they did previously. In fact, they even attempted to address the weakness that everyone saw from Worlds, which is obviously Yu Yanjia, the support player. They have a player they've been subbing in there for that position. The problem is, like, this team is all over the place. Dude, this reminds me almost of like the dodgy splits from IG, where it's like you look at the names on paper and you're like, these are too good, these players. Like, they've got to be really good. And then you even see when they have a good game, this is why they also remind me of IG, when they have a good match, they still have super powerful players who can just run over anyone with any picks. The problem is, much like IG, first of all, they have some sort of weird resistance to whatever the meta is. Like, they do whatever the fuck they want with the draft. And then secondly, like, this doesn't seem like a team that has the coherent style of play. Like, I don't even know if they could answer what they really think the style of players do. It almost seems like they fuck around to win the game sometimes, you know?
I think their style... This is really weird because Top Esports, they're doing the worst compared to when they had this team together with Knight and Jackie Love. This is their worst split by far. But for me, it's actually been the most entertaining split because how well they do is solely dependent on Knight. That's basically their strategy at this point. They have an MVP split coming out from Knight, and if you look at the bans, most of them are targeted at things that have higher ceilings. Viego, Silas, and Lee Sin. So basically, if he gets these 3 picks, a lot of times what he can do is he can play like 1v2 in the side lanes. He can dance around the teams and draw them away from Drakes, and then the team gets to sneak the objectives and just snowball that way. So this is a really interesting team to watch because nothing else is really working. I felt like Qingtian was kind of like the Shy Light, but with even lower damage. His laning phase was okay, but a lot of times when it went into split pushing, he would just go on his own and die. So he had a very, very high death rate. And for Jackie Love, it's been a kind of a meme in the LPL that if you're playing against Top Esports, you should always path bottom. Like, no matter what the matchup is, no matter what the process starts, you just always go bottom, and Jackie Love will gift you a kill.
Yes.
It's really crazy how badly Jackie Love has been playing. And I think, unfortunately, we can tell that everyone else on Top Esports is replaceable. They sat out Qingtian, they sat out Zuo, but for some reason they cannot sit out Jackie Love. And I felt like that's just been the consistent thing throughout the entire split, is that Jackie Love, he plays super greedy. A common theme is that he will overstay for waves. So a lot of times he will win the 2v2 and then stay in lane and then just get picked off by the jungler. So he gives over a bounty and then he loses wave control, and a lot of these snowballing teams just fall apart. So I really like still watching Top Esports, but for very different reasons, because it's pretty much been the Knight 1v9 show where he tries to hard carry his team, and sometimes he can still do it because the champions that are in the meta are that powerful to the point he can do it, but most of the time not.
Yeah, sadly, if you're someone, again, who only watches international tournaments, but then you hear like sort of like the rumours coming out from the LPL, sadly, don't worry, for a 3rd straight year, we are all going to tell you that Knight is actually the best player in the world. It's just that if he doesn't do it at Worlds, we're just going to look like assholes again. Because it's true, dude, like when you watch it, right, the only people I can compare him to is like Prime, Rookie, the Shy, in terms of like, he's playing in like a super skilled league, but as you say, he has games where he's just like way better than everyone in the server. It's crazy.
Yeah, he has to do it alone a lot of the times, and I'll be honest, like, if this split Top Esports continue to underperform, I'm not sure that Knight is going to stay on this team. I think there's a fairly high chance that Knight just goes for a different roster, and every other roster would want him, so...
Oh, of course, yeah. He'd be like an instant upgrade to like half the teams in the playoffs. That's how good the guy is, yeah. By the way, on the Jackie Love point, I have a quick follow-up on that I want to ask about, because that's another thing that I've found very weird. The LPL seems to produce players that are just like, the term in English would be idiosyncratic. They just have these weird elements that only they have, but somehow they just keep doing it, dude. It's one thing, in a way, I sort of respect it. Like, I like the idea of, playing to your character and who you are, but like, a player like Jackie Love's an obvious example, because here's the thing, right? When he was on IG, it was always presented to me, because this is the other thing, people who love the LPL, this is why like Claylove just is the LPL to me. It's a player that's like, in a way it's brilliant, in a way it's really flawed though, but what you do if you're an LPL fan is you just try and like sort of argue against the way it's flawed, as though it was all planned. Like, oh no, he actually knows that he doesn't need to gank, so that's why he comes into the team fight really strongly. It's like, that almost makes sense, except his role is fucking like ganker, basically. He's fucking jungler. Yeah. So similarly, right, for Jackie Love, here's the problem I have, Clement, is when he was on IG, it was always always presented to me as like, oh, in a way it's sort of genius though, because he knows that since all the attention is going to be on Rookie and the Shy and their solo lane monsters, if he plays up in lane all the time, you have to pick your poison if you're the opponent. Like, which lane do you go to? All three are pushing, and you can't shut down all three at once. The problem with that is, mate, as soon as he left that team, he just kept doing it anyway. Like, he still does the exact same style even when he's in a different team. So the problem is, like, people always try to present Jackie as like, oh, he's this shot calling AD carry and he's so smart late game. But why is his laning phase so? It's always been like this, dude. He's always been like a weird liability where he'll just like int kill. He's clearly mega skilled, but he'll just int kills that. Like, seem unforgivable for AD carry. I always say AD carry's the one that has to be a bit more responsible. You can't just give away kills like a mid laner might.
And I'll be honest, this split is especially egregious because he's going on solo missions, and I think in previous splits you could maybe say, okay, his support wasn't up to snuff. Maybe he's
yes,
someone's trying to ward out. But this split was very obvious that he was just overstaying for wards out of nowhere. He's overstaying for lanes and stuff like that. And again, I think it's a very similar situation to the Shy. I'm not going to make too many guesses here, but it's hard to for me. It's hard to say that this guy is the same person that's playing in 2018 and trying to win worlds and trying to take down its all. It definitely does seem like sort of a motivational issue to me because these are very obvious mistakes, and I don't know what's happening. I think 369 on the other hand, though, has come back and been pretty strong. So that's a highlight point for the team. They subbed out Qingtian. 369 came in, gave the team a 20% win rate boost, and that is actually how they got into the postseason. So at least 369 is playing pretty steadily. To be fair, 369 still has the same issues where he's not an engager.
Of course.
And like Jackie Love, he still does overstay in lane quite a bit. So it's kind of a team-wide thing in both of the side lanes. And it's I would say to fans of top esports, just sit back, enjoy the Knight and Karsa 2v8 show, because neither of these side lanes are very dependable, and that is why I do not see this team as a top contender at all.
Yeah, the other thing also to add in is, like, first of all, the teams above them, like the three that you named, are very good teams. Like, those are teams that all have, like, totally coherent style, know how they want to play, strengths in the meta. So, like, realistically, there's no way top should win this split at all. But then, as I alluded to before as well, right, this is a team as well that's always had, like, its own perspective on the meta, right? They've never really just tried to play the strongest champions band. Like that doesn't really help them at the moment.
I would say that the way they draft is that they actually just go for power picks from start to finish. Like, if you leave any of the Lee Sin, Viego, Sylas stuff open, they will just take it. They'll take the Gwens, and they do not play for late game whatsoever. Their late game strategy is just overwhelming you with damage. There is no coherent, front to back strategy coming out from this team. There are some side lane elements here and there, especially for Knight, because he needs to do most of the drawing away attention onto himself thing. But other than that, this is not a value drafting team. We have a couple value drafting teams like WE. We didn't really talk about them, but they're a red side 1-3-1 team. Suning, they're definitely a value drafted team. They play around 3-item carries. But for top esports, it's basically, okay, what's the strongest picks in the meta? We're just going to full on overload on them. And if we make it to the late game somewhat even, then we'll just overpower you.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.